council meeting today. I do want to note that Councilman Deming will be joining us by telephone, and he'll be on the phone over here where the clerk is. So with that, Chair will entertain a motion to suspend the rules.
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Lawrence,
Second.
seconded by Mr. Tisdale. Any discussion? All in favor? Those opposed? Motion carries, unanimous. The clerk would read the revisions.
Gary,
Yes, sir.
I don't know if everyone can hear me.
They can hear
President
you.
Glavin, every vote you've got to specifically ask for my vote.
Oh, okay. What is your vote on the agenda order?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, it's still unanimous. The clerk would read the revisions.
To the consent agenda, we're substituting item 5B, resolution authorizing expenditures to Gulf Coast Center for Nonviolence in the amount of $30,000.
Move it as amended. Second.
All right, the motion is moved as amended, or the agenda is moved as amended. Is any discussion?
None. None.
There being none, all in favor?
Yeah.
Those opposed?
Ask for Deming's vote.
Mr. Deming, what is your vote?
I'm in favor.
He's in favor, so motion carries unanimous. We'll move on to our presentation agenda, and we've been waiting to hear the mayor's report.
Oh, pardon me. You want me to start again? Anyway, we should have the audit, final audit, no later than the 9th, but hopefully next week by the 4th. And then, of course, the 22 audit will move forward, and hopefully by March, everything will be in sync with our normal operations. All those matters that were researched have been resolved. They're in the last. They've actually ran the final test, but now they're reviewing the innards of the test, so we see no problems there. I did have a trip to Detroit at the annual, or the fall IAMC. It's Industrial Asset Management Council. That's with the Mississippi Development Authority. I think during Haley Barber's days, they became founding members of this. It's a public-private, opportunity kinds of council, and it had some pretty heavy hitters there. The conference was scheduled to be down here in 2020, but it has been rescheduled for April 1st through 5th, 2023, and that's it's called the Spring Forum, and I gave the council members of the schedule for the next 24, 25, 23, 24, and 25 years. We're up there. I think everyone got a big kick of the lighthouse, and we're up there. It's a good conference. The June conference will be in London, so we're in there with some pretty heavy hitters. So anyway, that was a great conference, and we expect them to be here in numbers in April 1st through 5th. And I think Mike wants to give us an update on a few projects.
The Point Cadet Marina upgrade project starts today. That's the near $7 million project to upgrade a third of the harbor. And they'll be fencing off the laydown area between Margaritaville and Golden Nugget, about half of that parking lot, be able to bring all the construction materials in. That's a period of performance of 240 days. You may also have noticed that all of the commercial shrimp boats are gone. That's because November the 1st is the notice to proceed date for the work in the commercial harbor. That's Hurricane Zeta repairs, $500,000 worth of new pilings and walkways and so forth. So all the shrimp boats are all down on the point. They're all tied together like they were at the hurricane hole, if you will, all tied together nice and neat. Hate to do that during shrimp season, but we've got to fix that harbor. Another bad break on Division Street. We were scheduled to pave this week, but there was a gas main that was hit, so they had to dig up part of the street. So the paving for Division Street down to the gate will start next Monday, the 31st, and will take most of a week. The street lights bases are in, but the actual street lights with the pole are not due until the 11th of the month. But it looks to me like right now we're shooting for about the middle of the month in order to have the street paved, marked, and street lights. It's coming together, but we just keep stubbing our toe. And we're waiting, literally hour by hour, waiting to hear from MDOT on the notice authorization to award the Main Street Crossing project. That's ready to go. We're just waiting for MDOT to give us authority to make the offer. So just a couple of big updates I thought I'd share with you.
Thank you, Mike, and I think that concludes our report, unless you have some questions.
Yeah, just a couple of questions, Mike. If you would, point me to, if you can get me a copy of the scope of work for the Point Cadet Marina. I can't remember what month we approved that. And it may be in there somewhere in the contract, I think. Who was doing the work on that? Was it Andacor?
Yep.
Andicorp and BMA as the engineer.
Gotcha. And do we have any idea on the commercial harbor repairs, how long that's going to take roughly? Do you know how many days?
The period of performance is 90 days.
Okay. All right, thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you.
There being no department reports, we'll move on to council reports. Mr. Lawrence?
Yeah, they had a ribbon cutting at new bed and breakfast right behind Mahoney's, Mary Mahoney's walkway. And those folks put a lot of money into that house. That is a strictly old Biloxi looking house, and they put a ton of money in. They asked a couple questions to the lights, the light poles we have up are leaning. So I told them, I'd tell them at the meeting that you'd fix those light poles for them. They go on, they're just leaning.
Right there
And
by
she,
the
and she wanted to know the little brick walkway, the thing that sits in front of their property. She wanted to know if it's possible that you could remove those, where it had the yard running.
We got some of the plans for that whole intersection from Rue Magnolia all the way to Howard Avenue. So we'll be putting the details to that. Yeah, no, definitely. I agree with you. It's an outstanding opportunity and you know, a great property. They did a great job.
Yeah, they really did, and they owned 4 houses in a row, and they kind of had the one on side of it connected. Handicap walkway or anything to make it all part of the bed and breakfast, which would be great, but they don't know how fun. They put a lot of money in those houses. Her family bought them houses in 1913, and she's kind of redoing everything. That's kind of a passion of hers and a dream, so she's worse than Fofo. She tried to talk, but she got all emotional, but they did get a good job. So that was really neat the way they did that. That's a ton of money they put in that house. Anyway, thank you.
Welcome, Ms. Newman. Mr. Tisdale?
Yeah, I know we had talked about a workshop at some point, talking about the compensation schedule and doing something for the rest of the employees. I emailed my thoughts on that to Mayor, to you and to Mr. Leonard and all the other council members, and appreciate if you take a look at it, and just happy to answer any questions, just my perspective on what I think would be a good idea. We're still, I assume we're still actively pursuing grocery stores or chains preferably for East Biloxi. I know that's kind of a numbers game, but also I believe, and Mr. Creel had mentioned several months ago, that the old Winn-Dixie location there off Pass Road and Pops Ferry was still empty and under new ownership, I think. So I don't know what the scoop is, and usually our economic development can't say much if projects are in the works, and I respect that, but I just don't want us to forget it would be nice to have stores other than Walmart to shop in for variety and things like that.
Dynamics that we have to get across to the people, and there's a lot of metrics that they look at as far as how, the reach in 2 miles or 10 minutes, and then the household income.
Right.
And we have a challenge to get across that this is not, especially this part of the peninsula, it's not your normal arithmetic when it comes to investment, because of the 7,000 hotel rooms and 4.2 million visitors a year. So the arithmetic of 50,000 people population plus another 50,000 that's here does change the dynamic of, I guess, the marketing considerations. So Jerry and I have been in a number of meetings trying to get that across. Jerry, if you have anything to update, but that's pretty much it. We not putting anything, we're taking a look at every opportunity.
Right, I just know housing is kind of a challenge to like you said, the math there, but anything we can do, I'm thinking particularly in East Biloxi on multifamily housing, so we have more foot traffic downtown to drive business Monday through Thursday, not just the weekends.
And most everyone asks, take a look at some incentives that may be placed, in consideration too. So we're, when the opportunity comes, we would ask council support on some of the offsets that may help them make the decision, as well as some of the things we're trying to say, you got to look at this in addition to your normal, marketing data.
All right, thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you.
Mr. Creel. That's it.
Mr. Barrett.
I don't have a report. Mike, I need to get with you after the meeting on a couple of things.
Is that it? Okay, I got a few things. First, shout out to Glenn Matina. He was the promoter, him and Joe Nelson, for Gulf South Baseball Promotions. They had excellent weather out at the Biloxi Sportsplex this past weekend. Several teams from Slidell and Mobile and local teams participated. This was a qualifier, so the teams that won in each division will advance to another tournament coming up in a few weeks. This weekend, I think there's a BPA tournament out at the Sportsplex. Certainly hoping that the weather is going to cooperate, because there's quite a few teams that are going to participate in a Saturday-Sunday tournament out there. But it was done well. The scoreboards were working. All of them were operating. They looked beautiful. And then most of all the sound systems, you could hear the announcement of the games, the national anthem. Kids were actually standing for the national anthem and showing the respect. And it was just one of those just all-American, all-around events. It was really nice to see that we could host here. Looking forward to the enhancements. I spent some time with the promoters, some of the coaches, and but those enhancements that we keep talking about for the Sportsplex will allow us to kind of tolerate any inclement weather. So fingers crossed this week, if we get bad weather, enough rain, it could cancel this tournament, where if we do some upgrades, the tournament can still proceed, and here we are in mid-October, still playing baseball. Slim Chickens, it's getting close to their grand opening. That's over on the corner of Cedar Lake and Pops Ferry. One of the things they ran into is the delivery of some AC units, rooftop units, and that kind of delayed, they would be open by now, but that kind of delayed the opening. So looking forward to that. And to Mr. Tisdale's point, I'm hearing some good things on those questions, and maybe some of those developers that you're interested in. I'm hearing some real good things out there, and Of course, I see some of these developers come through our hotel properties, and they're excited about what's going on the coast, and the information that I hear is sounding real good. The last thing I want to bring up is Hickman Road, and I've brought it up several times. This has now become part of Ward 6. I know Councilman Barrett has wrestled with some issues along that area, per se. And I do have some questions. I appreciate Mr. Creel. I talked to him before the meeting today, and he's trying to set up possibly a meeting on Friday with the owner. But there are questions on the zoning. I believe it is agricultural. There's no commercial zoning on this property that I'm aware of. There was a cease and desist order issued for, we think, part of the property. I don't know if it's all of the property or part of the property. I'll let you talk in a second. There's a lot of heavy equipment on the property, and I don't know with clarity what its use is for, whether they're parking or operating or using it to shape up the property. They are breaking up big blocks of concrete on the property, and it's very disturbing to some of the residents. It almost appears like it's commercial or industrial activity when it's, zoned agricultural. And then I do have a question about elevation. What are they doing? Are they filling in the land? Do they have the proper permits to do what they're doing? And if you want a couple of seconds, Jerry, I'd appreciate your input.
Okay. Yes, sir. When you reported to me last Friday that that there was some activity going on out there, I went out to the site to talk to them. Now, the property we're talking about, there are two sets of Hickmans. There's David and Lori Hickman that own the southern part of the property, the majority of the property, and then there's Thomas and Sarah Hickman who own a small part up in the front. The activity, the cease and desist order was for David and Lori Hickman, and there's no recycling activity going on that property. There is a building out there that has some barrels around it, and I spoke with Sarah Hickman this morning, and she said that David and his wife are in the process of getting rid of all of those barrels that are out there. There's 3 dumpsters on the very southern part of the property that says Hickman's on it, but I climbed up on those, and all 3 of those are empty and haven't had anything in them for a while. They also happen to say property of the U.S. government on those 3 dumpsters there. The property that Hickman's is zoned agricultural. The business has ceased. There is some breaking up of some concrete being done by Thomas Hickman and his wife. I talked to Mr. Hickman on the phone while I was out there, and what they're trying to do is to clean the property up, which is something that we've asked them to do for a long time. He said he's ordered a fence to go all the way around the property, which they'll have to pull a permit for. He said that they're breaking up that concrete to clean the property up. They're trying to do it behind a mound of dirt that's out there so that it's not, that would provide some type of buffer to the sound. The question is, if we shut down an operation on a piece of property, do those owners still have the right to park their equipment on there and to move the dirt around on the property, to level up some low spots and that kind of thing? I talked with Peter about that this morning. He said he's going to research it, try to have some answers for that meeting Friday morning. But we are working on this, and there's not a business operation. Now, as far as the noise goes, the ordinance says that if anyone is generating a noise that can be heard more than 50 feet from the property line that's disturbing the neighbors, then that's a violation of the noise ordinance, and they can call the police to come out there and cease that. There doesn't appear to be operating any business where they're taking supplies in from the public and recycling them like David Hickman's operation did. But we do have an order that David Hickman and them could not reopen that business unless they come in and go through the proper channels and get the property rezoned to something that would allow that type of operation. You'll remember that the Hickmans had sold a piece of their property to the Sims company. They came in and asked for a zoning change. That was denied. And so that business is not operating up there either, but that's where we are right now.
Okay. Thank you, Director. Look forward to the meeting on Friday. I skipped over Councilman Deming, who's patiently waiting on the phone. Mr. Deming, do you have a report?
I don't have a report. However, Councilman Tisdale, did I hear you say that you emailed us all something? If so, I didn't get it. Will you contact me directly to make sure that we have the right email address?
He's making a note of it. Note it.
Yeah, Robert, I can do that. I mailed it to your biloxi.ms.us address, all our city email accounts. I'll send you another one. Thanks.
Thank you. That's all I have.
Thank you, Mr. Deming. That concludes our council reports. We'll move on to the public agenda. This is citizens' comments. We have a total allotted time of 45 minutes. Each person, once you're recognized, raise your hand, you'll be recognized. Come up to the front, take a seat, sign in legibly your name and your address, and state your name and address for the clerk to record. We'll go ahead and get started. On this side of the room, would anyone like to come up and speak? Anyone on this side of the room? Yes, ma'am.
I'm Donna Moak. I'm representing Moak Investment Properties for the conditional use of short-term rentals on 124 Lee Street here in Biloxi. We are currently living in D'Iberville, 3453 Riverbend Cove, while we build our personal house at 120 St. John Avenue down here in Biloxi. I just want to let you guys know that I'm here if you have any questions or concerns, or if anyone has any other comments. I know we went before the Planning Commission. We had many neighbors come out very much in favor of our project. Many of them actually have their own properties that are currently used as short-term rentals, vacation homes on all sides of us. So they felt like it would be a nice addition to the community. Secondly, we are aware that property management is a key issue, and we also realize that if we are granted this conditional use, it is a privilege and it can be revoked as well as it can be given, and we definitely will maintain our property and make sure it's managed properly. But with that being said, I won't hold y'all up any longer in case anybody has any comments, but thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else on this side of the room like to come up and speak? I'll move to my right, your left. Yes, sir.
Hi. Good afternoon, everybody. My name's Thomas Edwards. I live at 351 St. Mary Boulevard. I'm at the dead-end street at the Wiltshire, the St. Mary Park. And the city, we just got a brand new playground set up. Looks great out there. And ever since school's let out, kids are there and they're having fun and they're doing things. But kids being kids are gonna do what they do. And I brought along a few things. We've got a pretty big backyard. These are not things that are found in our backyard. I'm not gonna bring all of them out. This one's interesting. We've got a couple of dogs, and the kids like to, when the dogs are barking, and that's what dogs do, the kids are gonna come over there and grab the fence, holler at them, scream at them, get the dogs stirred up. I was in my shower one Saturday, it was October 8th, and it's one of those showers that's got the crank down window. You might remember them. You could open them up and see. While I'm in there showering, there's a young boy at the edge of my yard with this, banging it on the fence. Of course, I holler at him. I won't tell you the words I used, but it was very loud. He dropped to the ground, dropped the stick like he was in Britain in a fire raid, said, "Get out of here." And then he, "Get up and get out." So this was that. This is one of the picnic benches that the kids are out there, and this stuff is not welded on, so it's bolted, so they're spending time with this. I don't think any of you want to feel that or touch it, but if you do, it's right here. It's pretty heavy. This is in the middle of my backyard getting hummed over the fence. And what I would like to say is my wife and I would like for the city to finish the job of putting up the privacy fence on that park that was on the west side and the east side and some of the north side. We now need it because sooner or later something's going to happen, and it's going to not just be a small problem, it's going to be a larger problem. And I don't want problems, and neither do you. Is there any questions?
Not a Q&A. It's not a Q&A, just public comments.
Okay. Just thought I'd ask.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
You-
Oh, and while I'm at it, the fence, there's about 30 feet of fence that doesn't have the heavy-duty wire wraps on it that keeps the chain link to the pole. And I have witnessed 4 or 5 kids holding onto the pole and just rumping up and down on the fence like it's a trampoline. You know, it would do for someone to occasionally inspect all of that fencing, all of this playground equipment, everything out there, because kids will be kids.
Thank you, sir.
Your stick is still there.
You forgot your stick.
Oh, yeah.
You might need that. You might need it.
Walk softly, but I'll need a little bigger stick than this one.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Anyone else on my right? Anyone else in the back of the room? Okay, we'll go ahead and conclude the citizens' comments. Move on to the policy agenda. We have an ordinance for a second reading, and it was moved by Mr. Barrett and seconded by Mr. Tisdale. Mr. Barrett.
No comments.
Mr. Tisdale.
I have nothing to add.
Anyone else? Any comments on the
Would you
ordinance? Do we need
adjust
it? Do we need to read it in the record, second reading? Let's go ahead and read it into the record.
Or an
Just one
ordinance to
second. Let me get it
amend-
read, and then we'll go to George.
Ordinance to amend Section 5418D pertaining to standards for material and equipment.
Thank you, Mr. Lawrence.
Would you adjust in this ordinance?
What happened in 1959, the city council voted to outlaw aluminum wiring for electrical installations because at that time, aluminum wiring was not safe. But over the years, they've made a lot of progress bringing it up to where it can be used safely. It's also less expensive and much easier to manage now. And the code, the electrical code, allows aluminum wiring for the main feeds running into a structure, whether it's residential or commercial. Now, inside of the structure, it still has to be copper. The wiring inside, it still has to be copper, but they are allowing aluminum wire for the main feeds coming up to the outside service. So what we're doing is removing that limitation on there. It's going to work much better for the electrical contractors out there because it's much more affordable. That's all it is, Mr. Lawrence.
Thank you.
All right. There being no other comments, we'll go ahead and call for the question. All in favor? Those opposed? Mr. Deming, what is your vote?
In favor.
Thank you. Passes unanimous. We'll move on to resolutions. If the clerk could read item B.
Resolution granting conditional use approval to authorize a self-storage facility located at 276 Iberville Drive.
I'll move it.
Moved by Mr. Lawrence,
Second.
seconded by Mr. Barrett. Mr. Lawrence?
Yeah, Jerry, I think this group come in and dealt with y'all, and y'all explained everything you had to do this property and make it useful. This is actually
There are two special conditions on this. Number one, there are going to be two buildings inside of that wooden fence that they've put in there, and the buildings have to have solid facades around the sides so that you can't see the boats or the RVs from Iberville or anywhere. And also, they asked for a variance on the paving material to be able to use limestone, and the Planning Commission voted that the main driveway coming into the property all has to be pavement, but the stalls themselves could be limestone, and that'll keep the limestone from coming out onto the road. Other than that, it was unanimously approved.
all right. Thank you.
All right. Anyone else have any comments? No one? All right, we'll call for the question. All in favor? Those opposed? Mr. Deming, what is your vote?
I'm in favor.
Thank you. Passes unanimous. Move on to item C.
Resolution granting conditional use approval for 4 separate short-term rental units located at 124 Lee Street.
I move to deny.
There's a motion on the floor to deny by Mr. Lawrence. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Seconded by Mr. Tisdale. Mr. Lawrence?
Yeah, we have to meet conditional uses, you have to have 9 regulations to do that. It does not qualify for conditional use because does not meet the 9 setups that we use to do that. Other thing, you're basically building a mini motel on this little piece of property with 4 different units. It's gonna have to have 8 parking places, handicap parking places. So, but you have no control on this piece of property. This is just gonna be, it's the first time anybody asked for to build 4 motel rooms. And that's basically what you're building here. They have people around that area that have short-term rental, it's on their property, and they live there. The houses, the garage, or whatever's in the backyard. This is an empty lot, and it's not under construction. They had that on the thing, under construction, it's not. All it has is some piling land on the ground. So there's nothing there that meets anything that they suggest in there. But that's the problem when you turn that into 4 mini motels of what you're doing. That's not like everything else that's short-term rental in that area. So that's why I just can't support that. Jerry?
Okay, well, the property is zoned RM20, which allows short-term rental as a conditional use. The Planning Commission and the council have already approved 2 short-term rentals, 2 immediately north of this, one at 128 and one at 130, and also across the street at 129, there's a short-term rental. This RM20 zoning is surrounded by RM20 zoning on the north side of Comfort Place, and on the south side is waterfront, which would already allow a hotel to go in. The owners have agreed to sprinkler these units. They've also agreed to add the secondary means of egress. It was passed at one of the recent council meetings, because these are going to be elevated structures. They'll have parking underneath. They've got 2 parking spaces for each unit, each bedroom, so they do have the adequate parking to do it. But it's a conditional use. If there are problems, the council can always revoke the permit.
How did all these become RM20 properties? It's little bitty pieces of property. How did all those properties in that area become RM20s?
There were public hearings held whenever the land development
When did we do that?
When the land development ordinance was adopted. I don't know, some of this might have been RM20 even before that, but when
Those all single-family units. So I'm asking you, when we adopted that single-family units to be RM20s?
Well, it would have been in 2009 when the LDO was adopted.
Was that an overlay district? How'd we do, why'd we take?
No, this is not an overlay district. This is the actual zoning on the property.
And all these people was notified that we changed in the
Yes,
property
sir.
RM
There were
20.
public hearings held in every
No, you
ward.
notified the people that own the property. That's
Yes,
the biggest problem.
It was,
Putting the sign up, don't get it. I mean, does these people realize that the property RM 20? Not this group, anybody else. I mean, that's a problem. That's the same problem we have with the overlay district we're doing right now. You're not telling people you change their, we don't have the authority to change this property without notifying these people personally. You can't just turn everything into what you want. I know we went through a lot when they did the waterfront. That turned out to be, that didn't work out well yet. When we did 40 acres, 50 acres, they suggested we do that waterfront. I know that before most of y'all was here, but that was another fight we had. But I didn't realize all these little lots of RM 20s were turned into RM 20. So you're talking about 2009, that we can pull this up and read this?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, but you're taking a little bitty piece of property, this ain't even a quarter of an acre, and putting 4 units and a lot of parking that's gonna have to back up on the street. And none of that qualifies for all these things in conditional uses. So, I mean, that's why I just can't support that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Tisdale.
I have nothing to add to Mr. Lawrence's comments. Thank you.
Ms. Newman? Mr. Barrett?
I have a question, Jerry, during the planning commission hearing, was there opposition to this?
There was one person that came in with a concern who has just moved in over on the street to the east of this and had just bought a house, but that was the only one. I think he's actually a policeman with the Biloxi Police Department. But when he understood that it was conditional use and if there were problems that this could be brought back up to the planning commission and
What was
council.
the planning commission vote on it?
Unanimous, it was 9-0.
And so if I'm looking at this map correctly, this is completely surrounded by other RM20 or either waterfront property. There's no residential zoned property.
Not single family.
Correct, okay.
Yes, but multifamily residential,
Okay,
yes.
that's all I have.
Mr. Deming?
I concur with everything Nathan just asked, and I have nothing else to add.
That's it? Okay. I have a couple questions. One for Councilman Lawrence. So conditional use has to meet certain criteria. What are you arguing that it doesn't meet? What part of that criteria for conditional use, what are you saying it doesn't meet?
Our law states is that you have to meet all 9
Okay,
criteria.
which ones is it not meeting? That's what I
I don't think it meets any of them.
Okay.
None of them. It's not doing anything with the character of the neighborhood. The parking, you're backing out on the street. I mean, every one you read is against a conditional use.
Okay, the other thing, I'd like to call the owner of the property back up, give you the opportunity for some questions. Not only from me, but from any of the council members up here. And thank you for coming today, by the way, but you are right. If we do grant conditional use and it's not working out and there's problems, we can revoke the conditional use. But ma'am, can you tell us a little bit more in detail? You know, what do you plan at 4 units? And where is your expertise in managing this property? And tell me kind of a little bit of a summary of your business plan.
Okay, well, 2 things I want to address that Mr. Lawrence has brought up is about backing out into the street. We actually have a turnabout that the DRC made us put in, so there's a way to turn out without backing into the street. That way they can pull out front ways into the street. And you're right, we have went as far as we can with this project. We're about $140,000 invested. And we're at the point where you need to get a construction loan, and no lender's going to give us the money for this construction based on the cost of new construction for long-term rentals. The long-term rental rates do not even touch what it costs to build right now. So the only way we can proceed with this project to improve this piece of land is with short-term rental income. Otherwise, it's just completely cost prohibitive. I'm not sure if there's any other questions. And it's just kind of, the way it is. It is zoned for this. It is a quarter of an acre. We could actually put 5 units on this piece of property if we wanted to. We chose to put 4. We originally were going to do 4 single units, but because of the fire code and different things, we ended up having to put it all under one roof, which it actually turned out probably a little bit better. It has covered parking and a covered stairway, where before it was going to be uncovered stairways. It will be sprinkled, as Mr. Krill said. It will be definitely properly managed, completely fenced. We're going to do everything we can to make this property beneficial to the community. And another thing I want to mention is my husband and I both have went through the fortified evaluator classes and both became certified. We don't evaluate our own properties, but we do know how to build up to the Cat 4 hurricane standards, and we will be building this project under those fortified standards as well.
All right, thank you for those comments. Listen, when these conditional uses come up, I use a couple of criteria. One is the council member that's in that ward and what their feelings are. The second is the sentiment for the residents that live in and around that area, and there's no one here at council tonight that is making any noise about this development. So I'm a little conflicted right here, trying to make a decision. If there's any other questions, does anybody else have any questions? Mr. Lawrence, any questions?
Do y'all have any property now that you manage like this?
I didn't understand.
Do you have any property you already built that you managing?
We built a property on Beach Boulevard, but it's sold, so we're not managing it, and we have one under construction on St. John, but we're building it as a single-family residence. We bought this lot on Lee Street because there are so many short-term rentals already in that area versus St. John, which is to me primarily residential, closer to Keesler, and we have spent at least 3 years working on this project to make sure we met the DRC's guidelines. I've been before the Planning Commission twice, met with Mr. Krill on various occasions to make sure we meet all the criteria, which I believe we do. And at the the Planning Commission meeting, we had several neighbors that came out in support of our project. There was the one gentleman who mentioned that he just moved here from Belize that is going to work for the police department. And like Mr. Krill said, once he realized it is a conditional use, if it's not properly managed, that privilege can be revoked.
When you say several, how many is several? I mean,
There was, thinking like maybe 5 or 6, Mr. Krill, I can confirm that.
I could answer that for you. I attended the Planning Commission
good.
meeting. I made a note that there were 3 that spoke generally in favor, and a couple of one of those was a neighbor for sure. And then there were 2 who spoke against. I think one of the gentlemen lived maybe on Keller, a block to the west, was concerned about crime associated with short-term rentals, I believe was his concern. And the other was a gentleman who I believe lives on Beach Boulevard.
Yes, sir, and after the meeting, he actually came up and talked to us about being interested in investing in our project. So he was on board before we left.
Okay, thank you.
Ms. Baker's, she said that she didn't really have a problem. It was managed right. That's the biggest problem we have. You can't be on a property, so how are you going to manage it right? That was her concern. Short-term rentals, if they manage right, it's not a bad deal. When somebody has an apartment in their house or their yard, they're there. You're not going to live there. You're going to have full open.
I understand your concern, and you can't say they're there 365 days a year. People do vacation, and people do have fill-in for them when they're not there. So I do understand people have cottages behind their homes that they may rent. The lady right behind us, she was in favor of our project. She has a vacation home, which is like an apartment, and they live next door to it. And, I understand that they are there the majority of the time, but they are not there 100% of the time.
I mean, I know
And you have to make conditions for that, and you have to have people who are backing you up. And that's the reason why we intend to have it professionally managed. The management of this project is as important as the project, because without it, we're not going to be able to maintain the short-term rental conditional use. So
my problem is nobody going to be on the property, and all you can do is have complaints turned in. And then Jerry's got to act on the complaints turned in. So that's the people that live there is going to turn in complaints. Not going to be the police department, not going to be the fire department. And those are the problems we're having with some of these short-term rentals all through the city, you know.
Yes, sir. Under the Planning Commission, one of their concerns was if there is a call, how quick can you be there? And from our, right now, our townhouse in D'Iberville and St. John, we could be there within 15 minutes.
Yeah.
And their concern was, can somebody be there within 30 minutes if there's a problem? But we are here. We're just not on that property.
It's the 2 o'clock in the morning call that destroys everybody's problems. So we've already been there and done that. you know.
Honestly, sir, that could happen with long-term rentals as well as it can happen with short-term rentals. And on top of that, short-term rentals are really very much more well-maintained than long-term rentals because you don't have anybody there for a year or 2 years destroying the property when you're not there, you know, every turnover, every 3 days or every week, making sure it's properly maintained and so forth.
So that's another problem I have with these short-term rentals like this here. If it don't work out, then it turns into Section 8. You have to rent them, you have to do something with them, or sell them. You know, that's why actually if you ever develop it and think, are you planning on flipping this property if you get this done, or you actually plan on building? So that's something we can't force you to do one way or the other. You can turn around tomorrow. We approve this, you sell this tomorrow to somebody. That happened several times already in the council. We passed them on Tuesday, they sold by Friday. So that's where you gotta look at everything in the neighborhood.
Yes,
People
sir.
that still living there. Because it is a residential neighborhood. It's not a commercial neighborhood. The RM20s state residential RM20s. People supposed to be living there. Thank you.
Mr. Barrett?
Jerry, I have a question. I've seen the map and everything, but how populated is this area right here? As far as just looking at those, it looks like 2 blocks of RM20. How many homes are around that?
Actually, there are a number of homes north of this between there and Howard Avenue. If you look at the map that's in your packet.
Okay, so I'm looking at Jenkins and Comfort Place, which is sort of the boundary roads. And then Lee, you know, north and south of it. And then you have Lee Street bordering, which this sets on. On those 2 blocks right there between Jenkins and Comfort Place, how populated is that?
I believe there are houses on just about every lot there, but the point I was going to make was that on Howard Avenue, which is just to the north of this, the property is zoned NB. So you've got a commercial zoning there along Howard Avenue.
And just north of that's Howard, correct? Okay, I can't see it on this map.
But again, the 2 houses just to the north of this property are already short-term rentals, and the house across the street is already a short-term rental.
Okay, and so this is, if this is approved, this would be required basically to be built to hotel standards or apartment standards with the sprinkler system and all that type deal.
A secondary means of egress. And let me just remind you that we've provided the list of all the short-term rentals in town to the police department, and the police department is now keeping statistics on everything that they get called to a short-term rental for, you know, just like they do any other site.
Okay, that's all I have.
Hey,
Thank
we-
you. Mr.
we-
Deming? Mr. Deming, you still with us?
I don't have any follow-up questions.
Nothing? Okay, anyone else?
On the police reports, I know we tabled a couple of these things for that. Have you received anything from the police department? I know John Miller came in and gave us a little spiel, but he said he couldn't do enough because you don't have enough information on all the actions on the short-term rentals. And that's what we seem to be waiting for, to make sure that we get all the stuff right.
Well, at the time, he didn't have the list of all the short-term rentals, but we provided that to him now. So he has it now so that they can keep statistics on it.
And we had some of these problems, Jerry, where people have called in complaints, and what do you have done about those complaints? Not this lady, other ones that we already done.
Well, I mean, the complaints would normally come into our department. There might have been some that went to the police department that they didn't keep up with, but as far as short-term rentals go, I can only think of 2 or 3 times where we were ever called about a problem with a short-term rental. Now, one of the problems we had to do with spring break and the overcrowding of one in West Biloxi. That was a complaint that we got, you know, but now what we do is we And again, it's been a learning experience for us, but now what we do, and we've done this for the last few years, we calculate the number of people that can be in that apartment or in that building based on the same criteria we do for anything else. The square footage inside the building and the number of approved exits coming out of that building. And so we actually have something that we can go shut a short-term rental down for. Fire department or police department can if they're in violation of the occupant limit.
And you keep talking about those short-term rentals around the area. The Williams house is one of them. And those houses are totally enclosed. You're talking about building 4 units sitting out in the open with a swimming pool. So did they pass the 60% land?
No,
They
they're
got
okay
the 4
on,
apartments, parking places, and they also have a swimming pool.
yeah, they're okay on impervious surface coverage, but I think you heard Ms. Moak say that they're going to put a solid fence all the way around this property, so it'll be enclosed.
Thank you.
All right, Mr. Barrett?
A couple more questions, I'm sorry. Number one is hypothetically, right now it's on the table to deny this. If that doesn't pass and this is voted on and approved as a conditional use, we've never done this before, but let's just say that they don't keep the property up. It's rowdy people all the time. Everyone around there complains about it. What's the process of us removing the conditional use for the property?
First of all, we put them on notice that they're in violation of one of the criteria that was passed.
Okay.
We give them the opportunity to correct it, just like we would with any other code violation. If for whatever reason they don't correct it, then we take it to the planning commission and handle it just like a case.
And then it would
We
come back
present
to
it, and it
us.
would come back to you because y'all are the final authority on it.
Okay. Yeah, I just think with no real opposition to it, I think in situations like, and George, if it was in a single-family residential area, and, I've stood with you on those before, but I think that in this situation, it's one of those where we have to, instead of looking for reasons not to do it, I think we need to look for a way to make it work. And then if it doesn't work out, if every fear that you have comes to fruition, we have a remedy for that. We can simply say you no longer have a conditional use. And so I think that as a city, we have the planning commission in place, and I know there's instances where we vote against that, and there are times that I believe they get it wrong, but in this instance, I think that we have to support them, and then if something does come up, we have a remedy for that situation.
Mr. Tisdale?
Yeah, I looked at the property this afternoon for the council meeting, and Comfort Place runs along the south side of this property,
Yes, sir.
and I think it continues another block west.
That's
It's a
correct,
very
yes, sir.
short street. And on this, at this particular location, you've got it's got to be at least a 200-year-old oak tree. So it's not a straight road. In fact, it's deteriorated significantly since the hurricane, as a lot of those roads in that area have. But does that provide enough room if there's a fence around the entire property and that oak tree? Does that provide enough room for single-lane traffic or a fire truck
Oh, you're talking about Comfort Place?
on Comfort Place?
That might be a good question for the chief here, knowing what width they need in order to get through there. So,
Got a picture if you need it. But
well, I'll answer it this way. This went through the DRC, and the fire department was there all the time that it went through DRC, so. Okay.
all right,
Would you
thank
like
you.
to make a comment?
I would like to comment
Okay.
on your concern.
Sure.
When I said we originally, sorry, let me step there. When I said we originally had 4 single units, they were facing Comfort Place. And the reason that when we went back before the DRC, the fire department did have an issue with the condition of the road. The neighbors had concerns about the oak trees being damaged. So that's when we had to regroup, go back to the architect, and had the plans redrawn to where they were coming in off of Lee Street. And that gave the fire trucks the width that they need to access the 3 sides of the building. So we were able to pass the DRC once we redrew our plans with them all under one roof, coming in off of Lee Street. So we will not block or be accessing Comfort Place for these units.
Yes, ma'am, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
So
Anyone
the-
else have any comments?
I have a question. How, you coming off Lee Street, how you gonna do that and have a turnaround? That property's not that big. Somebody, you putting a lot of stuff, a lot of
Here for it.
turnaround on the property, just a long skinny piece of property. It's not even 0.25 of an acre.
Okay.
And you're putting 4 units on it, all those parking places on it, and you're gonna have it coming off Lee Street, not Comfort Place now?
The concern was, will they have traffic backing out into the street? And the answer is no. What the DRC made them do is to put in a little apron there on the side on their property so that the cars coming out could back up into that apron and then come out head first onto Lee Street. So
So you got more land covered. Are you gonna have 40%, 60% covered? How you gonna do that? I mean, you're covering too much of the land according to your own rules.
yeah, no, it meets the criteria for impervious surface coverage.
Okay.
Okay.
Mr. Deming, anything to add?
Nothing to add.
Thank you. The motion on the table is to deny. It's been duly presented and seconded. I'll call for the question. All in favor of the motion to deny? Those opposed? Motion to deny fails. I think it was 2-4. Robert, I think I heard you vote, but go ahead and tell us.
I am in opposition of the denial.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Deming. Chair will entertain a motion to approve the zoning. Thank you. Moved by Mr. Newman. Do I have a second?
I'll say.
Second by Deming.
All right, I think that was seconded by Mr. Deming. Discussion, Ms. Newman? Mr. Deming?
Nothing.
Anyone else? Final thoughts before we vote to approve it or not to approve it?
I have a quick comment just to the property owner. It looks like this is going to get approved. Y'all just do a good job, keep the property up, and there won't be any issues.
All right.
Can I ask one question?
Yes, sir.
This is the jury. Nothing to do with
Okay.
the vote's gonna be 4-2. We know where y'all going. That's what y'all do all the time. All right, you shut these people down. What do you do with that piece of property?
Well, they would only be shut down for the short-term rental. They wouldn't be shut
That's
down
what I'm
for
saying. So
being
what does
allowed
that
to
property
use their
turn
property.
into? Section 8?
Well, I don't think this will convert to a Section 8 property because you'd never be able to, like Ms. Moak said, you can't justify this type of construction or this type of an investment on Section 8 prices. So I just don't see that being an issue.
Well, she says she can't do long-term rental, so what are you gonna do with the property? If it's not Section 8, it's not long-term rental.
Well, if it's like the other short-term rentals we've got in town, I'm sure that they're going to be busy in this part of town because the ones next door rent it almost all the time, so.
I mean, we don't have no problem with, we got enough hotel rooms and motel rooms. We don't need that. I'm just saying, you creating a problem. Now, if you shut them down, I just don't see what you can do with it. That's why Nathan kept asking that question. But you shut them down, and they're not Section 8, not long-term rental, what are you gonna do with that building? Just sit it there, do nothing? And that's when them people that's always in favor of this in the neighborhood, you're gonna jump in Holland and blame Fofo for that problem. So that's where you're going with this.
Okay, anyone else? Call for the question, all in favor? Those opposed? Motion, Mr. Deming, what is your vote?
In favor. In favor.
All right, thank you. Motion carries 4-2. Congratulations, we hope you're successful. We'll move on to the consent agenda. Do I have a motion?
Move it.
Moved by Mr. Lawrence, second.
Second.
Mr. Tisdale, Mr. Lawrence.
Yeah, on this, the bond, what are we doing with the bond? We discussing how we're gonna spend the money, or what we doing with that? That's, I think it's I and J, both of them.
that? Okay.
So I is strictly for the Pops Ferry extension. And that's, you allowed 7 million, you allowed 7 million for that part, for the Pops Ferry expansion. Okay. And have you received the other money you talked about? What is it gonna be the actual cost to do the Pops Ferry extension? I know we allocated that, everybody's for the Pops Ferry extension, we need to have that done. Do you think it'd be more than 7 million? I'm talking about from us, from the city. Yeah, okay. On the second part, I know we had the $200,000 in there for the concession stand. What I don't have is doing some of the stuff on the AJ complex. I'm totally against spending any money on them 2 baseball fields. So we hadn't actually said what we're doing with that 5.5 million? But I mean, but can we take some of the money and spend it somewhere else? It's gotta be spent on the complex. I'm just not in favor of the baseball part. I'm in favor of fixing up some of the fields. You gotta cover the girls' fields. There's a lot of things we need to do. The drainage, the problem. But I mean, I don't wanna spend, because you said you're gonna get 192,000 from Biloxi High. You said you're gonna go after $192,000 from Biloxi High, but we didn't get that money from them. So Biloxi High is putting up nothing for these fields, or nothing. This is strictly the taxpayers' money on the vine. Thank you.
Ms. Newman? Mr. Barrett?
In reference to that same item, no, this is a public park. This isn't a school park, correct? This is, all their facilities are on their campus. This is just something that happens to be next to their campus, correct? So this is. Correct, but it's a public facility yeah, okay. And then the only other question I have is the 5.5, that's basically off of the assessment that we got from Machado Patana, whenever they did that. Okay, that's the only item I have a question on.
Okay. Mr. Deming? Okay. You want to go last, or you want to?
No, if I go before, yeah, no,
Go ahead. Mr. Tisdale?
Yeah, so what we're looking at, this is part of that $14 million in bond money. This is what's set aside based on the Machado Patano study. We've not bid it out yet, correct? Are we going to look at alternate bids in case we're looking at phasing this, or try and tailor it to stay within the budget? Right. Okay, and when you consider what we're looking at, 5.5 million here and 7 million for the Pops Ferry extension, that leaves us 1.2 million, roughly $1.25 million. I'm perplexed. I've never been perplexed at a council meeting before, but that's the word that comes to mind. So we started with 14 million, and we knock off roughly 280,000 for bond expenses. And then we subtract the 7 million from that, and the 5.5 million, and that leaves us with roughly 1.2 million. Am I doing that correctly?
Close enough for pickleball.
Close enough for pickleball, and I know we've said
We need
200,000
pickleball.
for pickleball, and I hope that we could pull a trigger on that sooner than later for pickleball, but you've never committed to what we're gonna do with that difference, whether it's 1.2 or 1.5 million. How shortly? I'm looking, that's the only thing about being a councilman is that we don't always know when, but you know when. You have to share that with us. Gotcha. Right. Right, as long as you don't come into conflict with some of the arbitrage. All right, I'm looking at short-term perplexment. So I'm done, thank you.
Mr.
Thank you.
Barrett.
I have
Barrett.
one more quick question. So the total cost left is on the Pops Ferry extension, 17 million, you said, approximately, give or take? And so that means about 10 million of that's coming from other sources. So so that was going to be what my question was. Is there the possibility that we could dig further and find more money through the state, through other avenues to knock off of that 7 million? That way it would leave a bigger chunk for other projects. But that is a possibility. Okay. Okay. All right. Okay, that's all I have.
All right, thank you, Mr. Barrett. I do have a couple comments on the bonds, and as you alluded to, could knock some stuff off of the 7 million if we find some additional sources. The same thing goes on the 5.5. If we were looking at 6 at one point, we've trimmed that down to 5.5, but that could go down further if we find some other sources. Unfortunately, as Mr. Lawrence alluded to, we were hoping to get the school system to participate directly into some form or fashion, and that didn't materialize. Maybe there's a chance to go back after something, and I'm sure we'll pursue that as we go through this process. I'd like to call Nick Moody. I see him in the back. Nick, if you'd come up to the front. Don't want to spend too much time on this, but I just need, for the record, kind of a summary of that study that was done and some of the main points and why. Why are those needed?
Sure, thank you, Councilman Glavin. Nick Moody with MP Design Group. So yeah, based on our study, we looked at several different things. One thing out there is drainage. That's an important item. Where all this entire complex drains. The city has done some maintenance here recently to help some of those issues, but we're looking to further clean some of that up and to help the drainage. Second, is parking. We've got some efficient ways to add some parking out there, about 100 spaces that's needed. And then I think you've seen it, Councilman Lawrence, with what they're dealing with over there in the infield is a lot of materials running off, the dirt's getting into the drainage system. So we look at addressing that, that's a main issue. And then I also saw your concerns about, the light pole, you said you settling, they got some fence posts, some settlement issues over there. I mean, that's part of the engineering process to get a geotech engineer involved to do some borings out there to see what's kind of going on with those fields and see if we can remedy some issues over there. And then on the Little League side, there's some drainage issues over there in the outfield, infield as well, and just looking at doing some improvements to better those fields, to get them up to par. You know, when you compare Pascagoula's new complex, what Gulfport's got going on, is to kind of spend some money out there to kind of elevate and bring it up to what's going around our neighboring cities. So
Nick, I know, Mayor, just give me 1 second. So I know you've been around to some of these, to compare AJ Holloway to Sportsplex, to some Pascagoula, Ocean Springs, D'Iberville, new parks. On a scale of 1 to 10, how do we rate against those other parks?
I think
Currently, where would we rate right now?
I would say 6 to 7.
Okay.
My personal opinion. But what AJ Holloway has compared to other facilities is the location, in my opinion, and the proximity to the other amenities there, the interstate. It's just in a great location to promote. You know, we're getting some tournaments now, involvement. But like you said, if there's an issue with rain comes up this week, you know, those tournaments are going to be to find a resolution or find somewhere else to play or cancel. So I think some of these improvements will kind of help us promote some of those tournaments every weekend. I mean, if you look at it, I know you know with your grandkids playing that consistently Gulfport, Pascagoula, D'Iberville, they're booked up every weekend. So,
Nick, let me jump into, since this conversation started a year or so, and even before that, I've investigated especially Ocean Springs, and some of the shortcomings out there is where I think we need to push. And in an alternate situation, if it may become 150, based on ground conditions, their estimates were looking at sort of a worst case scenario for asphalt and some of these other materials. Hopefully, we'll have it, but I would, as an alternate, even that 100 may be 150. And I think the more the convenient parking spaces, the better it's going to be. Even though it's not, exotic as far as feel, the parking is a big deal. I know in Ocean Springs, they got a great big complex out there. It's tough to get to, and the parking is not what I would like to see in this. If you do those things, what we're talking about, it'll be more than competitive.
I agree. And then also, going back to the alternates, how we lay this thing out, we'll certainly identify, base bid options, the most important things to spend money out there, and then have several alternates that you can, get prices on and pick and choose and match what you want, and really be up to the city how much you want to spend. Is this a viable option? Is this not? Just a lot of flexibility to work inside that budget. So.
Once the bids go out, and we may be, 60 days from bid time, I'm not sure. Just in general, in period of construction.
From
Yeah,
today? Or?
From the time, what we ask for as far as number of days to do the work?
I would say 90 to 120 days,
right?
Really, because to get a geotech involved,
right?
And we have to complete some surveying out there.
Right.
We flew the drone that picked up the bulk of the information that we need for design, but we still need to get boots on the ground, field crews out there to shoot.
Timing's everything for the next season, and that's where we want to be in place as fast as we can.
Timeline, I think we have plenty of time for design, get through permitting, the way we can structure to open bids, sometime in April. That way we can be ready once the spring season ends. Yeah. Start construction and then complete it before the next spring season. Right. 2024.
There's a lot of things that could be happening in parallel. Like I said, the parking, I keep coming back to parking. The more you add to parking, I think the better it's going to, given what we've actually, parameters.
And the 100 so spaces we identified were pretty easy
to do.
Just clear some trees. The ground's already pretty much prepped. Just clear some trees and add the subgrade in the parking.
Right. Not protected trees, just
trees.
No.
Correct. Yeah, pine trees. So,
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thanks,
Thank you,
Nick.
Appreciate it. Final comment, Mr. Tisdale has something else he wants to talk about. I know that Mr. Barrett was asking who owns it and controls it. Before we were considering this bond, we had basically a year-to-year lease on the property with the school system. I think that was renegotiated to a long-term lease if we were going to make significant investments in it. So we've changed that relationship so that we have more control over it for a longer period of time. Mr. Tisdale.
Yeah, just very quickly, I noticed we've got a special event on item S, which is the Meat Mayhem. That's right, Meat Mayhem here coming up in April, I think. Excuse me, in November. Do we charge, for these events, do we charge the promoters, whoever is putting it, shouldn't we be charging them something if they're using our facilities? Or do we set any kind of precedent? Or are we charging for this event?
They put the boats in the water.
The boats in the water, and they use our slips all in the water. That's our
So the compensation to the city is just slip rentals or whatever, but nothing more than that. I'm thinking,
It's a small tournament.
right. Do we have a minimum? Yeah, I don't want to get into it, but okay, that's all. It's a long day already. Thanks.
Okay, Mr. Lawrence.
I just want to say something to answer Nathan's question. The baseball fields, the city has never used those baseball fields for anything. The baseball field is used by the junior high and everybody else. So they're not Biloxi fields, they are fields. The only time we use those baseball fields, which are sinking, sitting in wetland, is when Barry Lyons run a wooden bat league, period. That's why I don't have a problem with fixing up the Little League and the girls' park. Wasting money on them two baseball fields does us no good. They only one big field and a smaller field. And to extend it, you have to extend it in wetland. Not much slop, and he can tell you, it's gonna sink. The fence is sinking, telephone poles are sinking, the light's sinking. So, I mean, that's the problem with the two baseball fields. Nothing but a huge expense for the city of Biloxi to gain nothing from it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lawrence. I beg to differ. I spent a lot of time out there. I was out there this weekend. I didn't see any other council members there, but
Were they using the baseball fields? No.
they were using the fields, and we've used the other fields as well quite a bit for practices, and that's why we're doing this. It's in we've let it go. It's in a condition that we need to improve that drainage. We need to improve the facilities. We need to improve the parking. As much as we can out there, help out the tennis courts if necessary, and make this a true sportsplex. Otherwise, we'll lose it, and it'll be nothing that we'll be proud of in Ocean Springs. The kids will be out at Ocean Springs. Just a minute. Ocean Springs, the kids will be out there practicing. When it rains, they'll be playing games and practicing. Gulfport will be playing games and practicing. D'Iberville will be playing games and practicing. Pascagoula will be playing games and practicing. What will Biloxi be doing? They'll be going to Ocean Springs. They'll be going to D'Iberville. They'll be going to Ocean Springs, Gulfport, Gaucher, et cetera. And that's just wrong. We need to correct this problem, and that's what we're attempting to do. So, just my opinion.
Well, to answer that question, you spend millions of dollars on turf. First of all, you're going to have to do it every several years to do that. You're going to have to have always another $1 million. You're going to have to have machines and people to handle it. It's not like cutting grass. That's a total different game. And yeah, everybody lived. You didn't play one day, you play the next day. Ain't nobody left Biloxi to go to Ocean Springs to play anything. We still host the tournaments, so we still play the tournament. The baseball fields, to spend that kind of money on it just for somebody to practice on it, you want to do something? You make an 8-field complex with the Little League. You want to do something. You want to get people here. That's what you do. You got to have enough fields to play, like the soccer fields. We don't have enough soccer fields to run tournaments. There's only 2 or 3 of them. So if you want to make it a complex, then do it the right way. There's a lot of empty land out there.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Anyone else? Okay, there being no one else, we'll call for the question. Approval on the consent agenda. All in favor? Okay. Mr. Deming, how do you vote? Okay, any exceptions? Mr. Lawrence?
No.
Ms. Newman? Mr. Tisdale? None. Mr. Barrett? Did I hear no from Mr. Deming?
He said he's in favor.
Okay, no exceptions. And then I have no exceptions as well, so it passes unanimous. Okay, we'll move on to code enforcement. Open code enforcement's up. Yes? Thank you, Mr. Deming. All right. Jerry?
Okay. Item A, Johnny M. Alexander, 618 Esters Boulevard. This case has been resolved. Item, item B, Cortland Biloxi LLC, 1865 Beach Boulevard. I spoke with a representative of that property yesterday, and he said that if we would give them 30 days, they will get it cleaned up. They've changed maintenance companies.
Move
and
to 30
I
days.
believe they will.
All right, there's a motion by Mr. Lawrence to give 30
Second.
days, seconded by Mr. Tisdale. Any discussion? All in favor? Those opposed? 30 days granted.
Item C, Quang An Hong, 156 Rossetti Street. That property is still in violation.
Appears to be grass cutting. Is there anything else beside grass
Trash
cutting,
and,
weed
trash
cutting?
and litter. Yes,
Okay.
sir.
All right. Is there anyone here to speak on behalf of Quang An Hong? There being none, this case is closed.
Okay. Item D, Ariel Pham Liu, 250 Monackey Avenue. This property is still in violation. And Miss Sarah Liu is here to represent.
Okay, Ms. Lou, if you'd like to come up and say a few words on your behalf.
I think she left.
She wasn't. She must have left. She came up to me. The problem here is, part of the problem here is that someone is living in that camper in front of this house. There also appears to be another camper in the rear. If we go back to the picture, you can see back in the back.
Jerry?
Okay, here she is.
Okay. Ms. Lou, if you would just state your name and
Yes, my name is Sarah Liu. I'm here for the property 250 Banaki. And I'm from California. I just flew in to take care of this issue. And this person, his name is David Marina. And he moved in, just like, I believe the end of August or September. And he didn't pay me anything yet. And then he didn't tell me that he have a trailer or the camper. I didn't know that until the city, sent a notice to me in September. And then I sent, the notice to him. And I told him that please take care of that. And he said, oh, don't worry, Miss Sarah, I will remove it in September. That's what he said. And I just, thought, he would do it. And then when I, recently, I believe, I talked, to Miss Tara just about, I believe last week. And I came over and I saw, his camera still there. And he just sent me the fixed photos, and he said it's gone. And then I asked him, you have to send immediately. The city doesn't allow that, and he lied to me. He said, oh, the city allow, no problem. I said, no, and the city doesn't allow any camper, even you don't live over there. And I beg him every day, move the camper, and then he said, give him time, and then he promised he'd do it. And until, today I came over, it's still there. I have to call the police and then the tow truck company, and now they already removed. The camper's not there anymore. Yeah, and with the police help. Before that, I called, another tow company, and he blocked him. He blocked, the tow company. He wouldn't let, them remove it. And then I called Tara again. I said, what can I do? Tara said, just call the police. And today, with the police help, and we can be able to remove, tow, the trailers out of my property.
So, Ms. Lou, the camper is removed, it's gone? Is that what you're telling me? The camper's still there, or is it gone?
It's not on my property, it's gone. He parked 2 trailers on my empty lot, 245 Banaki, and he parked 1 trailer in front of my house, 250 Banaki, and 3 of trailer is gone. It's not on my property anymore.
All right,
And
the other violations are what, Jerry?
And I already.
Excuse me, I'll let you speak, but
Weeds, grass, overgrowth,
It's already
trash and
cut.
debris, and the vehicles that are there.
Oh, you want me to tow the vehicle too?
No, this is what we advertised.
I'm sorry?
He was asking me what the other charges were on the property. I was telling him what the other violations were on the property.
you have other violations beside the trailer or the camper on the property. What are you doing about the violations?
I already cut the grass. I already paid, the guy to cut the grass and remove the weeds. And trash, tire, whatever over here is gone.
All right, is that all? Is that all you have to say? I'm asking you, is that it? No, I'm asking her, Anything else you want to add?
Like I said, I like to take good care of my properties, even I'm not here. And any violation, I want to take care right away. The problem is I live in California, and I didn't know, he lied to me. He sent me the fake photo. He said, it's gone, it's nothing there. And I have to flew in, taking care of the issue to see with my own eyes. And when I saw that, I came a couple days ago, since last week, and that's why I went to talk to Miss Tara. And Miss Tara gave me this list. And before that, she didn't say about the RV at all. She just said order. And when I met with her, I asked her, oh, please write down RV not be available in front of my house or the other lot. And I have her write it down for me. And then I can show it to the tenants. And I came every single day. I beg him remove. And I sent the tow truck in already. And then, he stopped them. He wouldn't let me move. And this morning, I said, serious, I cannot let you do this anymore because I get a court date. I make sure it's clear. And then I have to call the police.
When will all the violations be corrected? How long will it take you to clear all these violations?
The other thing is done, it's gone. And then the RV, it just happened. I called the tow truck company.
Kenny,
I'm not worried about the camper. I'm worried about all the other stuff, the debris and the grass cutting. When will that be done?
can I say something, Kenny, before you get into that? Please. If y'all remember, we done had you here several times. It took us 6 months to tear down the houses because you didn't do anything. We tore down one on Porter. We tore down one, Forest. We tore one down on Banaki. And you sitting there and said you didn't collect any rent. You wasn't supposed to be renting them campers to anybody anyway. Once again, you're violating the city's ordinance. And right now, you're not going to clean up anything. Most people, we'd be glad to grant you something to clean up the property. You don't do that. You live in California, you tell us that every time. You live in California, but you own a lot of property in the city of Biloxi, and you don't take care of it. And we have this before us constantly, your properties.
I learned my painful lesson, okay? I don't want that to happen anymore. And this is, when I learned in September, I already talked to him. And he said, and he taking care of this. And he said, give him time, and I gave him time until today, and I knew that he just lied, he didn't do it. And definitely, I called Tara, and Tara told me, what should I do? And Tara told me, just call the police, and the police have to be there. Otherwise, he wouldn't let us, to tow the camper. And then I just talked to the tow company, and Tim told me that, his,
Yeah, but Ms. Lou, you wasn't supposed to be renting a camper anyway.
I'm sorry?
You wasn't supposed to be renting a camper anyway.
No, I
on
didn't
that property, right?
Sir,
you didn't get paid. You got upset when you didn't get paid. So
he
you
didn't
try
pay
to
me a
rent it.
dime. No, he didn't pay me for anything at all. And I never allow him have the camper there. I told him clearly, I can show you the text. I said, you have to remove. Do not allow the camper and do not allow, any RV. This is residential. And then, I sent him the text and I told him the city doesn't allow that. You cannot do that. When, he moved into my place, he didn't mention about anything about camper. I didn't know that. And until,
Okay,
found out that.
that's a moot point. He's gone. So that part of it is a moot point. Mr. Director?
He's,
Hold on, Director.
Ms. Lou has a history, Ms. Lou has a history of moving people in or allowing people to go in and work on her rental houses without permits, without approval, through some type of a rent arrangement, you go in and do this. I would like for the council to allow this to go through. It's my belief that the camper may be gone now, but it'll probably show back up tomorrow if y'all drop this. And if you'll allow it to go through, then we could address it in the event that the camper shows back up again on the property.
Director, if we allow it to go through and she does clean up the rest of it and you go out there to fix something that's cleaned up, then it's dropped anyway?
Resolved, yes, sir. That's the way that it works. Now, you can,
All right.
the pictures, if you'll go back to the picture where I was showing the second, that right here, you can see that there are boxes back in the back that kind of indicate that there's building materials that's being unpacked there on the property. That's why I believe that there's probably remodeling going on the inside of the house.
Okay.
On the other side, they parked that black trailer there to block us from being able to get to the backyard, so.
All right. Chair will entertain any other discussion before we close this case. I'm sorry.
I think we ought to just let it roll.
Okay.
Make sure we get it done.
I'm sorry. We'll go ahead and close this case.
I want to file eviction against the tenant today or by tomorrow.
All right. This case is, thank you. This case is now closed. Item E. That's it.
So what should I do from now when the case closed?
I would go take care of your property. That's what I would recommend.
I take my property back, right?
This case is closed. We have to proceed. That's it. See the director after this meeting. Item E.
Item E, OCAB Land Investors LLC, 2060 Beach Boulevard. That case has been resolved. Item F, Ramiro Rodriguez, 116 Acacia Avenue. That case has been resolved. Item G, Chan Tran, 173 Dorey Street. That case has been resolved. Item H, Connell Lewis, 0 Deloney Street. This property is still in violation.
We're getting 30 days. They've done nothing.
Yes, sir. And I spoke with Councilman Gines today because I didn't know if he had been communicating with the owner. Councilman Gines is sick, but he said to move forward with it, that it needs to be cleaned up.
Okay.
All right.
Yeah.
Is anyone here to speak on behalf of Connell Lewis? There being no one, this case is closed.
Item I, Herman and Beulah L. Smith Estate, 262 Midway Street, a number of extensions. Councilman Gines said to move forward with that one as well.
Okay.
Here to speak.
Anyone here to speak on behalf of Herman and Beulah L. Smith Estate. There being no one, this case is closed. Chair entertain a motion for the routine agenda.
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Tisdale. Do I have a second? Mr. Lawrence, thank you. Mr. Tisdale.
Not a thing, thank you.
Mr. Lawrence.
Walt, anything, you said you're gonna give us some good update today. See if you come up, see what you did with.
Nothing yet in the, by MEMA yet. They have one of their analysts for the Horn Group is out this week, but our next meeting is November 8th, and I suspect, or we'll have some funding in there. They have all the invoices and pay apps and checks from our last docket, so they're in the middle of processing it.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Anyone else have anything on the routine? Call for the question. All in favor? Those opposed? Motion carries. Where we at? 4-0?
Yeah,
4-0. Okay, Chair entertain a motion to adjourn
I'll make that motion.
Second,
or recess, huh? No, adjourn.
adjourn.
All right, motion was made by Mr. Tisdale, second by Mr. Lawrence. Any discussion? All in favor? Those opposed? Motion carries 4-0. We are adjourned.
Nathan's still around here somewhere. I was going to get him to high school and sports complex.